Hi, what's up, everybody? This is HJ here, and welcome to another podcast episode. I am pleased to announce that I'm finally back doing my typical episode schedule, somewhat of a schedule anyway. And in today's episode, I really wanted to talk about how I was able to turn my little laptop PC into maybe one of the best gaming laptops in my mind that I can possibly imagine, using just a few simple tools including RAM and an additional hard drive. Now, you don't have to be a technical expert to do this. In fact, all it takes is a very decent computer, a decent amount of money, and a little bit of an extra budget. And no worries, you guys can do this yourselves at home as well if you want to try it. So for example, I started off with 8 gigabytes of RAM on my laptop, and I started out with a 256 gigabyte hard drive. Well, because of my type of laptop, I also have an additional hard drive bay, which is actually very useful because I was able to install a 2.5 inch SSD to that additional hard drive bay. Now, most people's laptops don't have that. In this particular case, you need a decent sized SSD. If you're not going to be doing solely gaming and you maybe want to tinker with a couple other things, I would suggest getting a 1 terabyte at a minimum, or 2 terabyte max. If you're going to be doing just basic gaming, but you don't plan to use your PC, your laptop as your main gaming machine, say if you have a desktop or whatnot like I do, then I would not recommend spending a whole lot of money for a terabyte or 2 terabytes. Maybe get a 512, or if they have something in between, get something in between. Now, you're also going to need a RAM stick. In my case, 16 gigabytes if you're on an Iris Xe GPU and 11th gen, which most basic computers nowadays are running 11th gen or higher as far as I've seen, then you probably are only going to need 16 gigs of RAM, because 16 gigs of RAM, like I have discussed in the YouTube video, which I'll leave a link to that, it's a separate thing, is basically, if you have 16 gigs of RAM, then whatever your RAM is, half of that is your video RAM, or video memory, at least for your integrated systems. Now, this is not for NVIDIA or AMD GPUs, as they take dedicated RAM. Now, typically, I put it this way, most people will use 16 gigs on their system, or 8 depending on what they start with. And I would say that it is a little bit better to use 32 gigs, but just know, if your computer does not take 32 gigs or higher, then it might not be worth your while to get 2 16 gig sticks. Now, my computer, fortunately enough, and I did some research into this, it does take up to 64 if I'm not mistaken. So 2 sticks of 32 or 2 sticks of 16 to do either 64 gigs of RAM or 32 gigs of RAM might be enough. And actually, that's probably for optimal experience, because if you have a heavy program running, like say Destiny 2 or Halo for example, then 16 is good, but having 24, 32 or higher gives your CPU and your GPU more breathing room to run other programs and still have just a tad bit more space left over so that your frame rates are not as bad. Now, if you're questioning the hard drive, and really, if you have a hard drive at home that you're not using anymore, an SSD at home, for say if you have like an external SSD or an SSD for your Xbox that's external, all you have to do is literally take the shell casing off and take the little adapter piece at the top off, and if you have the SATA hard drive connector and you have an additional hard drive bay, you can easily hook that into your laptop. That's actually what I did. Now, if you want to take the other route and get an M2, then you guys can be clone geniuses and clone the operating system onto the hard drive and then stick that bad boy into the hard drive slot where your current SSD is. Now, I think that's all I wanted to share. I don't really have a lot more else to give. And if you guys are interested in learning more about my tech videos, I've provided a link in the podcast description for you guys to go and check out my actual computer videos. I also have some gaming videos there too, so if you guys want to click through to my channel and subscribe, I do have an option for you guys to do that. As always, you guys, I thank you guys for joining me on this podcast adventure, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.